In the land of Stonehenge, a mystery refuses to die. Long after human hoaxers stepped forward to claim crop circles as their own, the things seem to be reaching superhuman proportions and spreading around the world. Are they alien landing sites? Messages from a higher intelligence? Some sort of weird weather pattern? Or history's greatest prank?
Well, the aliens put it there.
Other civilizations evolved on this planet many tens of thousands of years ago, and some of them are returning.
There's nothing, it's just flattened crop, that's all it is. Flattened crop and overactive imaginations.
If you were someone in a UFO and you wanted to leave a message, wouldn't you go to the lawn of the White House and make a crop circle?
Join a trio of artists creating their own circle and take a hard look at the evidence. Weird orbs of light that seem to accompany crop circles. Strange changes in the plants themselves. And electrical equipment gone haywire as science and the supernatural collide down on the farm. Wiltshire County in England's West Country, land of lush, rolling hills, vast farms and mysteries ancient and modern. This is Druid country, home of white horses carved into the hills and prehistoric monuments. For thousands of years, Britons have felt that this place was sacred. They responded with ritual and reverence. They built massive, enigmatic circles, such as Stonehenge. And today, circles are again cropping up in these fields, creating a mystery of epic proportions. In the shadow of an ancient monument called Silbury Hill, farmer David Hughes tends his crops at Galty Moor Farm. And Hughes is not a happy camper.
It's nonsense. It really is big nonsense. I just can't tell you enough how stupid these people are. I really can't.
At eye level, there's little to indicate what might be angering him so much. But take to the air over his farm, and it's more than evident. Someone, or something, has been wreaking havoc with his crops. It's a lovely havoc, to be sure, but for the farmer, it means a lot of unsalvageable wheat.
It's costing us money and we're getting nothing out of it. If it was the other way around, how would they actually like me to come into their garden and trample down their flower bed and say that it came from aliens?
If believers in the paranormal are right, Hughes is being plagued by a phenomenon that's been around for centuries. They point to a 1678 wood carving called the Mowing Devil that seems to depict the creation of a crop circle in England. But it wasn't until the 1970s and 80s that crop circles began hitting the news again. At first, they were simple enough, small single circles just 30 to 40 feet in diameter. Then they began to spring up in increasing numbers and complexity each year. And thousands of believers in the paranormal flocked to them. By 1991, a minor craze had seized Wiltshire. Then, everything came to a screeching halt.
I'm Dave Chorley, this is Doug Barr, and we are the two people that created the crop circles in 1978.
Artists Doug and Dave made their first circles on a whim, hoping to create something that looked like a UFO landing pad. Believers in the paranormal took the bait. Doug and Dave could never have predicted the kind of response their artwork would evoke in the public imagination. Books appeared, tourists mobbed the landscape. When they went public in 1991, they revealed how easy it was to make circles, even for men in their 60s. Their demonstration took some of the wind out of the believers' sails, but only briefly. Trouble was, Doug and Dave couldn't have made all of the crop circles themselves. There were too many of them, too far apart. Almost 3,000 crop circles, hundreds of them outside of Britain, have appeared since 1978. In most cases, no one has claimed credit, fueling speculation about who or what could be making them. So, the mystery lives on. While most people now agree that some crop circles are man-made, they agree on just about nothing else. There are skeptics who know that all crop circles are man-made.
People have said, oh, well, two men couldn't have done all. No, of course two men couldn't have done all of them, because other people found out what was happening and said, hey, that's a good stunt.
You turn on the television and the radio, you open the books and magazines, it's this great mystery with all these scientists completely baffled. But the emperor has no clothes, there's nothing, it's just fattened crop, that's all it is. Fattened crop and overactive imaginations.
Then there are the crop circle makers, who come from many different camps. Some have fun toying with people's heads. Some are commercial artists.
I'm not a skeptic and I'm not a believer, I'm an artist, and that's kind of why I make crop circles.
Some believe their circular art actually creates paranormal phenomena.
Great universal intelligence is looking down on us tonight. Please give us the inspiration that we require to complete this circle.
Finally, there are those who believe in circles that are not man-made. Some try to study the soil and plants scientifically. Some detect strange conscious energies in the circles. And some see the patterns as signs from UFOs. To many, the evidence couldn't be more obvious.
Skeptics, it's very difficult to know where their head is actually at. You know, it's trying to ask a cod what it thinks of London. You know, that's how brain dead a lot of them are.
You know, we were so fed up with hearing about the debunking constantly. It's all a hoax, it's all a joke. Well, we'd all seen enough to convince us that wasn't the case.
Andy Thomas is a founding member of Southern Circular Research and editor of the website swirlednews.com. He's been researching and writing about crop circles since 1991.
Well, I remember the first crop circle I ever saw was just sort of in the distance. There was something that went dong in there, and I just knew that sort of my destiny was somehow being rewritten. There was just something so mysterious about it that called to me.
Thomas has observed and measured hundreds of crop circles over the years, and he's also been involved in experiments trying to influence their creation. These have convinced him something's out there, and it's eavesdropping on us.
One experiment I was involved in back in 1995, we sat up on a hillside. We had a certain shape that we hoped might arrive as a result of this experiment. We meditated, we focused our minds on this shape, imagining it appearing as a crop circle. We then found out that that night, exactly that shape that we had drawn appeared as a crop circle in our local area where we'd done the experiment. Now, nobody knew what we were doing. It was carried out in secrecy. We didn't make it. How did it get there? What were the odds? What was the coincidence of that? There's a lot of evidence that this is an interactive phenomenon, almost as if something's listening in on your shoulder, or we are throwing something out there which is then manifesting in the fields for real.
Whatever is manifesting in the fields seems to be generating strange energies. First-hand accounts tell of fresh batteries going dead, cameras malfunctioning, and compasses acting strangely. Paul Viguet says he's witnessed this firsthand. A computer programmer, he's dedicated much of his free time to the circles. Paul was in a circle near David Hughes' farm one day when he couldn't get his mobile phone to work.
I thought, well, that was odd because it was working just now. I went to the edge of the crop circle, literally held the phone at arm's length over the crop, and the meter on the phone went up to full signal strength. Brought it back in the circle and there was no signal. And you almost got tingles down your back thinking, yeah, there's something strange here.
What is that strange thing? Paul Viguet will only allude to some sort of energy that science has yet to discover. Andy Thomas feels the presence of some sort of intelligence, though what form it might take, he doesn't specify. But Reg Presley calls it like he sees it. A longtime crop circle follower, he's also the lead singer of the Trogs, a group which hit it big in the 60s with Wild Thing. Reg isn't hesitant to use the dreaded U word, UFO, but he's got some alternative theories as well.
certainly rush to say that it's from outer space, but it could be people in our future that have learned how to time travel, and maybe this is a critical period in our evolution when they're coming back to find out what they can do to just tilt it a bit or put it right or something like that. You don't know.
But here's the rub. Why don't crop circles form in front of witnesses? One of the most compelling arguments that crop circles are man-made is the shyness factor. They appear when no one's around. Statistician Ted Clay has never visited a crop circle. Instead, he's a cyber detective, analyzing crop circles via the web. Even from thousands of miles away, he sees human fingerprints all over the formations.
There's one really big reason to say you should be suspicious of crop circles is that they occur at night. If the purpose was to get our attention and to send us a message, wouldn't it be more effective to get our attention by doing it right smack in front of us in broad daylight? Why is it always seeming to be created out of view, out of sight?
Reg Presley has his own explanation for the shyness factor, a perhaps understandable reluctance on the part of superior beings to rub shoulders with violent primitives.
I love gorillas, but I wouldn't get in a cage with one. I don't think they're going to get in a cage with us because we've had people shooting at them, farmers shooting with shotguns, especially in America where they're allowed to have guns, you know. No, I don't think we're a happy bunch for them to even mix with.
So, UFOs, people from the future, an amorphous intelligence, an unknown form of energy, or just some common human mischief run amok in the fields.
They're getting more and more complicated. Now, are the people in the UFOs getting smarter? Are they getting more artistic? Is their message getting more complicated? And really, if you were someone in a UFO and you wanted to leave a message, wouldn't you go to the lawn of the White House and make a crop circle?
It's time to take a hard look at the evidence.
This is amazing.
Later, we'll investigate one of the most sensational pieces of evidence in which balls of light seem to create a crop circle in broad daylight. We'll also examine the findings of a research center that claims to have documented strange damage to the flattened crops. But before that, we'll be exploring some creepy encounters of the crop circle kind. There's no denying that crop circles have powers over human beings, to delight, to enchant, and some say even to heal. Whether that power is of this world or another is what's at stake. Paul Vigay may be the only person in the world whose idea of fun is to take electromagnetic readings from vegetables, flowers, and grain. It's a hobby that touched off his 12-year dedication to crop circles.
When I started out, I was fairly sceptical about the whole subject, but my mother had always been sort of had an interest in the paranormal, I suppose you'd call it. I went to visit one day with this little electronic measuring meter I'd made, and for a bit of a gimmick, I was touching it on some corn stalks she'd got hanging up. I was quite surprised to find I'd got different readings on different stalks, and she was quite amazed by this and got me to go in the other room while she muddled them up again. I came back in, sort of same type of readings on different stalks, and she got even more amazed. And eventually I said, well, come on, let me in on the secret. And she said that all the ones that there'd been no reading whatsoever on had come from a crop circle that she had visited, and all the others were from just ordinary crop.
This inspired Paul to dig deeper. After years of compiling strange readings, he's sure he's found a pattern. Flattened crops possess weak electrical charges, while upright crops are more energized. Paul sees the paranormal in these measurements, but Ted Clay sees the perfectly normal.
It comes as no surprise to me that you would pick up electrical differences between outside and inside a crop circle. I mean, standing wheat is kind of like a little lightning rod, and electrical charges tend to focus on the top, and it's going to be different from the electrical properties of wheat that's laying flat. but it doesn't tell you anything about how the crop circle was made. These are just characteristics of flattened wheat, flattened anything.
But not all observations of crop circles are so easily dismissed. Some crop circle enthusiasts say that no human could create some of the massive formations in a short English summer night. And they point to anecdotes about formations occurring in broad daylight in a matter of minutes.
There was a famous formation in 1996 opposite Stonehenge. It appeared within a period of 45 minutes in broad daylight.
It happened on a flight over Wiltshire. On the first leg, the pilot and his passenger passed over Stonehenge. They saw nothing unusual in the fields around it. The pilot landed at a local airstrip, refueled, and 25 minutes later was in the air again. This time, he spotted an enormous formation. It contained 151 circles and was one of the largest and most complex formations to date. Believers insist that there was no way the pilot and passenger could have missed such a large formation. Skeptics think differently.
Well, what I've heard of the story of the Stonehenge flyover is that they circled around Stonehenge. If you're circling around Stonehenge, what do you suppose you're looking at? You're looking at Stonehenge. Now, if there was a crop formation right here, it'd be pretty hard to be looking at Stonehenge and not also see the crop circle right here. But if it's way down here, it's a lot more difficult to be looking at both at the same time.
Here's another kind of evidence that seems to counter the argument that all crop circles are man-made. The infamous balls of light, or BOLs for those in the know. Balls of light may sound enchanting, but many say they're not.
I myself saw the so-called balls of light, and they were, well, literally these glowing spheres of light sort of sailing above the fields. Later on that same week, we experienced these strange black flickering shapes, and they were utterly bizarre. They were like these sort of black strobing effects that you could see them going, and they were absolutely terrifying, I have to say.
Balls of light have not only been witnessed, they've been caught on tape above and around the fields that play host to crop circles. In July of 1990, photographer Steve Alexander decided to investigate crop circles for himself. He took his video camera and began to tape. Suddenly, a floating light caught his attention. This is what he videotaped. It's possible to explain it away as an optical illusion, a video malfunction, or even a white bird over the field. But there was an independent witness. A farmhand was driving his tractor that day when he saw what he described as a shiny, bright object that flew over him. It then disappeared. What it was remains a mystery to this day. The most sensational piece of evidence, the one that comes closest to hard proof for some believers, appeared in 1996. It seemed to confirm the link between balls of light and crop circles.
There's a couple of lights down there somewhere.
On this video, balls of light moved over a field below an Iron Age fort known as Oliver's Castle. As if directed by an intelligence, they apparently triggered the creation of a snowflake pattern in the field. It was every believer's dream come true. The Oliver's Castle videos seemed to be a slam dunk, the definitive piece of evidence. But within days, doubts began to grow, and the debate over its authenticity continues to this day. Later, we'll get the behind-the-scenes look at this famous video, and we'll be creating our own balls of light for the camera. We'll see if you can tell which ones are ours and which are the so-called real thing. If the skeptics are right, for the past 3 decades, humans have been turning out in increasing numbers each summer, giving up a night's sleep, all for the sake of pulling someone's leg or creating art. Could humans have really made all of these amazing things under cover of darkness in a few hours? If so, why? It's time to meet the circle makers. They come from a surprising number of different camps. Some do it as a hoax, others to create their own paranormal experiences, and yet others to make art and money. First up, the circle makers who are certain it's all a hoax. 14 years ago, Dr. Robin Allen and Chris Nash joined up with like-minded college students and decided to have some fun with crop circles. They figured the simplest way to find out if humans were making the circles was, well, by making one. They had a few practice runs in the daylight. Then they took to the fields at night.
We started making circles in 1991. We made about 3 then. We kept going back year after year. They're getting bigger and more complex. I think we probably made about 50 or 60 in the end.
Repeatedly, the circles they made were cited as authentic paranormal formations by the crop circle experts. Today, Chris and Robin examine the handiwork of the star-shaped formation on David Hughes' farm. In their eyes, signs of its human makers are obvious. You just have to want to find them.
So you can actually reverse engineer how a formation was made by looking at the construction lines.
Circles may look complicated, but are basically simple geometry. One maker stands at a center point while another walks around him with a set length of line or measuring tape. This forms the rim of the circle. To create the first corner of the square, they measure out a set distance from the circle's edge to a point along the tractor line. From that point, they use the same rope that created the circle and run it back along the edge. This takes them to the base of the next corner. From here, it's just a matter of repeating the same measurements. When it comes to the interior ornamentation, the makers can do whatever strikes their fancy. Robin and Chris made circles as a lark, but discovered that feeding the craze. While knocking down wheat, they left bands and weave patterns that believers thought no human could make.
You get this so-called feathering effect, which used to be deemed a mark of authenticity. That just happens when you flatten stuff with the board, it just goes into the side. We found at one fell swoop that actually virtually all of these features are just artifacts of the manufacturer.
We weren't doing this deliberately, and it was the experts who came in the following day and found all these things, like all the other genuine circles, as they would say.
We used a garden roller mostly. We also used our feet, used our hands, and we used body rolling. We just rolled around, and they couldn't tell the difference.
Chris and Robin hung up their stock stoppers in 1999. Nearly 10 years into it all, the thrill was gone.
I was just disillusioned with the fact it was no longer a challenge to beat the experts.
While one generation has moved on, another, even more diverse group has taken its place. Some of these newcomers are even believers of a sort. Meet Matthew Williams. He views crop circles as temporary temples. He believes that circles, his circles specifically, generate paranormal phenomena. Before he starts work, he calls on a higher power.
Great universal intelligence is looking down on us tonight. Please give us the inspiration that we require to complete this circle. Also, please give us protection whilst we are working in the fields tonight. And also, can this formation be instilled with energy that will inspire people who look upon it, and also give healing to those that might enter this formation. Amen.
Out in the fields at night, Matthew has had experiences that he can't explain. Unknowingly, he once created a circle that believers said they had visualized.
And I got the inspiration to go out on my own one night, just as a single circle maker, and actually put this formation within a couple of 100 feet of the people who were asking for it.
Like many believers, Matthew has also seen strange balls of light out in the circles, and they've left him baffled.
I still don't know to this day, and me and my friends, still talk about that.
Matthew Williams makes circles for spiritual reasons, but it's landed him in the hot seat. He was arrested and fined after admitting to one, earning him the singular honor of having a criminal record for making circles. Art aside, Why would anyone risk arrest to make circles?
My observation is that it's a unique manifestation of male energy. It's kind of adolescent, but I can relate to it. You know, I think there's a part of any guy willing to go out in the middle of the night and sweat and get dirty to make it happen.
It's because it fulfills a need they have. They want a little excitement in their lives. And you'd be surprised at what people will do to make sure they get into the newspapers or get interviewed or can show up on the edge of the crowd while people are all looking at this wonder. They get a big kick out of this. This is something that's worth a lot of work.
For years, believers trailed suspected circle makers in hopes of catching them in the act. Believers bought night vision gear, set up stakeouts, and tailed suspects. It became a game of cat and mouse. The believers never caught anyone red-handed, and the animosity between the two groups deepened. Making circles and running circles around believers isn't just a strange hobby. People can make money doing it. One band has created so many circles, they've made a business of it.
Our group's called Circle Makers. Well, I think some of the researchers refer to us as Team Satan.
Why are these artists demonized? Because they make no bones about cashing in on crop circles. They claim to be tops in the crop circle making field and charge accordingly. Are they as good as they think? We're going to put them to the test. Crop circles began to make news in the 1970s and were just what you'd expect, simple circles. Then, with time, they grew in size and complexity.
People have pointed out that crop circles have gotten more complex over time. I think they're following our culture, not leading it. During the 80s, fractal geometry became a big thing. Fractal geometry hit the crop circle field in the early 90s. You start to see things that look very digital, very much like pixels, just as we're starting to use computers and have computer monitors a lot.
Today, some believers in the paranormal argue that many crop circles are just too big and intricate for people to create in a short summer night. We'll see if a three-man team of artists can produce a complex formation in under 5 hours, about the length of an English summer night. We'll be looking over their shoulders in a field of our choosing.
Actually, the best way to do this is actually to stomp in 4 foot.
Using the latest computer software, the circle makers have plotted out a square spiraling formation. At first glance, it looks simple, but no one's ever tried this pattern before, and with good reason. After they mark off the exterior circle, they'll have to work their way in toward the center. They must make every corner turn at exactly 90 degrees, and each line must be perfectly straight. If not, their errors will be compounded as they spiral inward, and they'll end up with a lopsided mess instead of a perfect square. To get around a field without leaving marks, they follow tractor or tram lines.
No, you do not step in any crop that is standing ever, under any circumstances.
Tools are simple. A few stakes to mark off key points, surveyor's tape, and specially made stock stoppers. Coming into Wiltshire in broad daylight carries risks for the circle makers. Farmers despise them because of the damage they cause. And many believers hate them simply because they make circles. How does that make them feel? But sometimes it's no laughing matter. In 1998, the circle makers were hired to make a formation for a commercial, legally and in broad daylight. When believers found out, all hell broke loose. First, they hurled abuse. Then they hurled rocks. The circle makers escaped unscathed, but it taught them to give believers a wide berth.
You can't win with the researchers, really. I mean, they kind of hate and loathe us, whatever we're doing.
Despite their money-loving reputation, the circle makers are first and foremost artists who do most of their work anonymously under cover of night. It's a risky practice because every time they go into a farmer's field without permission, they're committing a crime.
You know, what you have here is a slight degree of adrenaline that you get when you're making circles in darkness. And you know you have to be out of the field before the sun starts to rise. And so things just happen quicker, I think, because there's more of a kind of psychological pressure on you to get it finished.
Once their eyes adjust to the dark, they can see well enough to work. On occasion, a believer or farmer stumbles upon them, and they have to put an escape plan into action.
John, Rod, down.
At the first sign of danger, they head to a designated meeting point in the tram lines. They bide their time until the coast is clear. And if they do have to leave the field, they face other hazards. Some can catch them by the seat of the pants.
Some of the risks involved are electric fences and barbed wire. I've lost a few pairs of trousers to barbed wire over the years. And cows as well. You got to watch cows because they can stampede, and that can be pretty scary and funny as well, actually, afterwards.
They're not those kind of docile creatures that they appear to be in the day. They transform into kind of, you know, rural juggernauts.
Back on David Hughes' farm, the circle makers are 3 hours into their formation. Now it's just a matter of measuring and getting their 90-degree turns perfect. But can they get it done in time? Today, the circle makers are working out in the open for cold, hard cash. But usually, they take no credit for their work.
We've never claimed a formation, and we never will. Because if, you know, as soon as you do claim a formation, you just drain it of all of its power. And because they're authorless, people can then project their own kind of, you know, realities and imaginations and belief systems onto the circles. And, you know, we very much want to perpetuate the circles phenomenon.
The circle maker creates it in secret. The believer responds to it. And the circle maker feeds off that energy. It's a complete, self-contained circle. One art critic commented that whoever or whatever made them is an artist of genius. In under 5 hours, our landscape geniuses complete their square spiraling formation. The circle maker's job is done. For now.
Okay, guys, that's it. It's finished.
This shows that they can easily make a complex circle overnight.
Time for a drink, I think.
But just because the circle makers can make these formations doesn't prove all circles are man-made. It's time for science to enter the ring and try to settle the man-made or not man-made debate. We'll ask the experts about physical changes to plants in crop circles. And we'll take a hard look at balls of light that seem to appear around the formations. To prove that crop circles are not all man-made, believers have been turning more and more to what they consider hard evidence. The world's leading crop circle research group has been gathering samples for 14 years. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, not far from the hallowed halls of Harvard and MIT, is BLT Research. Nancy Talbot is the T in BLT. Talbot's not a scientist, but she coordinates the gathering and testing of samples from crop circles. With 13 professional consultants in fields like chemistry and aeronautical engineering, BLT's compiled a barrage of data.
I know that there is something which will enlarge our concept of reality by studying this, that we'll learn more things. We'll learn more than we know now about what we call reality.
BLT has published 3 papers about crop circles in 2 scientific journals. One study seemed to document that wheat seeds from inside crop circles developed at a different rate than seeds from outside. Another study analyzed the presence of a strange iron glaze in a circle. a study clouded by the fact that hoaxers claimed they scattered iron shavings around the site. But most of BLT's research has focused on the plants themselves, specifically the nodes, or hard, knuckle-like parts of the plants.
Perhaps the most critical of those early discoveries is the finding of elongated nodes, downed plants from inside the crop circles. They are markedly stretched, elongated. The man-made formations do not show this change. It's the best documented parameter that we have so far, and the most consistent.
BLT also believes that some sort of heat source, perhaps microwaves, are blowing holes in the plant's nodes.
What happens, the tissue is too tough, it's too fibrous, it will not expand. And as the steam builds up, it simply blows a hole right out in the node itself.
What's generating the heat? BLT contends it is an atmospheric energy. Back in the 1980s, physicist Terence Meaden first proposed that atmospheric forces might create crop circles. He theorized that a plasma vortex, something like an electrical tornado, could swirl down the crops. Eyewitnesses have reported both whirlwinds and balls of light over crop circles. But there's a hitch. No one has yet proven that plasma vortices even exist. That doesn't daunt BLT. They believe that 90% of all the circles they've tested were made by plasma vortices. They point to the fantastic shapes in nature as proof that a plasma vortex could create a complex formation. Personally, separate from the BLT research, Nancy thinks this energy may be trying to communicate with us.
My personal experiences have suggested the possibility that this energy system is conscious, has a consciousness, somehow or other interacts with consciousness.
But Nancy wants everyone to focus on the science, which she thinks can prove the existence of as yet undiscovered forces.
As these results are made public, I hope they'll inspire more scientists, and eventually we have enough people asking enough questions, maybe we'll have an answer to what this is. I hope so. That's our purpose anyhow.
For skeptic Randy, though, the plasma vortex theory is full of hot air.
Some people have said that they think that it's caused by vortexes in the air, that there are meteorological phenomena that produce this. Where was it back in the Middle Ages? Do they not have vortexes like this in the Middle Ages? Is this a new development that's happened with meteorology? No, it would not be possible.
When you're looking for answers about bent and elongated nodes in your wheat, who are you going to call? The grain doctor. Dr. Bob Cradaville specializes in grains and oil seed crops with the Agricultural Extension Program at the University of Maryland. Bob knows wheat, and he thinks BLT is jumping to conclusions.
It's my estimation that at this point in time, BLT hasn't eliminated all of the natural explanations.
Bob has seen many plants that have been knocked down by run-of-the-mill causes like wind and rain. This knockdown process is called lodging in the agricultural world, and he thinks the symptoms shown by crop circle plants seem an awful lot like plain old lodged plants, and exactly what you'd expect from human trampling.
What we have here is a picture of the bent nodes that are described by BLT, and what you can see is on the one side of the node, it's actually longer than on the other side, which would be the natural response a wheat plant would have when it's lodged. Its goal is to return itself to an upright position, so you get a lengthening on the one side of the node, the opposite side away from the sun, curving that plant's growth back upwards.
Bob is less certain about the cause of blown nodes, but he wonders why only the nodes would be blown if strange energies could boil water. Basically, the entire plant would be steamed, not just the nodes.
This is a picture of what BLT refers to as the blown nodes, when in reality this could actually be the result of the plant responding to the stress, growing very rapidly, and splitting apart.
What concerns Bob most of all is that there are no grain doctors on the BLT team, according to their website.
I was amazed that they didn't have anyone who was well-versed in the areas of wheat production, no crop physiologists, they had no plant pathologists, they had no entomologists, they had not even any generalists or agronomists as part of that team.
That leaves the balls of light, or BOLs. They make for some pretty compelling videotape. But are they for real? What does Ted Clay make of BOLs?
These things are being called balls of light, but where's the light coming from? And a key question with any of these is, are they generating their own light, or is this light that's coming from somewhere else, the sun? The three top explanations that come to my mind are hoaxes, birds, and wind-blown objects.
How hard is it to recreate a ball of light? To find out, we wanted to compare other people's videos with one of our own making. Which ones are ours and which ones are the believers? All we needed were bags and a fishing pole. And after just a few attempts, we made some pretty convincing balls of light of our own. Of course, this doesn't mean all balls of light are fakes, but it shows how ordinary objects, even seeds, can look like balls of light. But what about the most famous balls of light in crop circle history? This is the Oliver's Castle video, one of the most sensational pieces of evidence connecting the balls of light with the creation of a crop circle. It began to make the rounds the same day the circle formed. Many believers were convinced that it was the real deal.
This is amazing.
What strikes Ted Clay as suspicious is how the video maker acted.
If you were taking a video and suddenly two balls of light flew into the image, what would you do with your camera? You would follow the balls of light. In the Oliver Castle video, the camera never really moves. The other thing is the sound.
This is amazing.
Imagine if you were taking a video of balls of light creating a crop circle. Would your words be, "That's amazing"? Just doesn't fit.
His verdict?
It's a hoax.
He's correct. Unless you happen to be a giant conspiracy theorist. One day at dawn, John Waby, a worker at a video production company, spotted a new circle. Inspiration struck. He grabbed his camera and started taping.
I just really thought it would be quite a good wheeze to see how they reacted if that footage was placed in front of them. And that's what I did.
The rest fell into place in a matter of hours. A video editor copied a section of wheat from another part of the field, pasted it over the formation, and it looked like the field pre-formation. Throw in a few balls of light, dissolve the superimposed wheat from the inside out, and voila, you have your circle.
This is amazing.
Waby then took the tape to a pub frequented by crop circle enthusiasts where it stirred up a frenzy that continues to this day. Some believers remain convinced that the video is real. Some think John Waby is a stooge for the government or military, trying to cover up something more sinister about crop circles. At the end of almost every crop circle season, someone or something likes to end it all with a bang. This year, it's a monster formation, the type that could push Farmer Hughes to his breaking point.
Yeah, this is the circle that was created on our farm last week, and my comments on it really is sheer horror at the size of it. It's a hectare, which is 2.5 acres, is 100 meters by 100 meters, and we've probably lost the yield of 10 tons of wheat off that, which equates to £600 or £700. They tell me it's something to do with the doomsday, there's 12 days left or whatever there might be. It's in my very humble opinion, it's a little old codswallop. It's another elaborate crop circle that people have done. Their graffiti in our fields, and I'm just very fed up with it.
Believers say it's a Mayan calendar that predicts the end of the world in 2012. For Farmer Hughes, it's the proverbial and literal last straw. The wheat is finally ripe and dry enough to harvest, and all Farmer Hughes wants to do is cut down some of the circles. First up, the circle commissioned for this program. Harvest time spells the end of the crop circle season for believers and skeptics alike. Only one thing seems sure. Next year, the circles will be back. Whether they'll be changing any minds is another matter altogether.
I think the mystery of crop circles is part of its magic. It's the unknowing, it's all this wonderful space in the middle between the skeptics and the believers that creates this incredible forum for this whole debate about the nature of reality. There's been nothing like it in modern history for doing that.
I'd like to see a crop circle 3 counties wide. That would impress me. Or I'd like to see a crop circle in a Christmas tree farm. That would impress me.
People who believe in the crop circles, I think that they just need to get an interesting hobby. Maybe spend more time with the family, collect stamps, do something that's perhaps a tad more useful than going out in the fields and oohing and awing and measuring crops to find out whether or not the UFOs made them. Get a life.
One thing now seems inescapable. There's some sort of intelligence at work in the fields. The question you have to ask yourself is this: is there any reason to think that that intelligence is anything but human?